All right, so let's talk about the 2000s. It was the best of times. It was the worst of times.
So this is a decade where there was again a lot of change in comics, a lot of great change, a lot of not so great change. But what happened in this, in this era is that you started to see the length of time between the comic book coming out and the adaptation coming out kind of really short. Like that window starts to really shorten here. So one of the things I think was super influential in the comic space was the Ultimates, which I've got right back here, one of these directions. Uh,
Oh, I can see it.
yeah,
Yes,
so
it's
this was, part of the Ultimate Universe, which was Marvel's rebooted, modernized version of their characters and their storylines. And it's the Avengers, Captain America, the Hulk, Iron Man, the Wasp, and they just, made it a little bit more mature, a little bit more immature, and they Mark Miller and Brian Hitch did a really big widescreen version of the Avengers. There's political intrigue, there's, espionage, there's politics, there's all kinds of things in this that
mhm.
the Avengers stories had done before, but they're doing it on a different level here. And a lot of what you saw in Ultimates ultimately, pun intended, influenced the Avengers and the MCU films. So I had to include Ultimates on this list. It was one of the series that got me back into reading comics permanently. And I think, maybe some of it doesn't hold up as well as it could. The 2000s were a really hyper political time. I mean, when is it not? But in this case, a lot of that post 9/11 stuff was influencing the storytelling here. And I think, it's good to look back historically, but
Mhm.
it's a very interesting time.
It is. And I think that's I love Mark Millar's writing, but this is like peak Millar in the first half of the 2000s with, there's a certain level of profanity in it. Like everyone's intense. I mean, it's great stuff. I love it. And even but in Hitch's art on this, OMG, it's like insane,
Yeah,
and
there's one part where he does like a 9-page. So this is the Ultimates 2. This is collecting the sequel series. There's one part where he does like
mhm.
a fold out that is
Yeah,
just
I think
absurd.
it's insane. It's I think it holds the record for the largest fold out in comics history. Yeah, I remember that all too well. I mean, look at that. It's insane.
And that's only
And
half. Yeah.
I remember the original issue, those would, sometimes they would be late or they'd be delayed, but it was always worth it because you never felt like I waited 2 extra months for the next issue and for this. But I mean, look at that. That's
It's ridiculous. But yeah, yeah, there were delays and this was that started the kind of the trend in. I mean, it was always a trend, right? Comics were always going to be late,
Mhm.
but you don't remember that Watchmen published issues late nowadays.
Right.
But yeah, there was definitely a trend in saying, "Hey, let's wait. Let's let the team finish. We're not gonna fill in anybody to take over Brian Hitch. We're just gonna get the script done. Okay, it was originally 20 pages and now it's 38. We'll just raise the price by a dollar and people will deal with it." Uh,
Yeah, those. Yep.
so
Yes. And all good stuff. So what else was from the 2000s? I have a copy of your list, and this is something that I knew everybody would mention, and rightfully so.
The Walking Dead?
Yes.
Yes. You can't talk about comics in the 2000s without The
No.
Walking Dead. I mean, it's one of the most popular comic franchises of all time. It's spawned multiple TV shows, video games. I think there's gonna be, like, 3
Merchandising.
movies, yeah. So, it's a phenomenon.
Mhm.
Nothing really will compare to that feeling that I used to have of getting that new Walking Dead issue every month. It was a ritual for me. I would always read it. Eventually, I switched to the trade paperbacks, but I still read the issues in the comic shop. The week first thing that they came out, I would read it. It was unlike anything else, and it was in black and white, which I thought was really impressive, was a series that didn't even have color was that popular, because you typically think, American comics need to be full color, but Walking Dead bucked that trend, and I think it was fine for not having color.
No, and at the very least, it made it stick out from a. I also like that from reading it. It's kind of interesting because on one hand, it looks, oh, it's a zombie story, but then you look at a lot of the way that Kirkman laid the story and the plot and how it advanced. At the same time, it also was a lot like a Western movie.
Yeah, it was about the
So
humans. It
yeah,
was about survival, and it was about what is a world with all of the trappings of modern life gone, what does that world look like? Where
mhm,
it's kill or be killed, and that's, if you wanna compare it to the Wild West, I think that's apt. It was
yeah,
just and when it ended, when the series ended, like, that was huge because you're in this routine of buying something every single month for over a decade, and then all of a sudden the series just ends. No warning. That was shocking.
No. All right. And again, we'll have that all at the library. They have it pretty much at every public library because it warrants it. So last on your list in the 2000s is Grant Morrison's run on Batman.
It's coming in late, right? Like late 2007, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But this was a personal favorite of mine. At the time, I didn't appreciate it enough. But having gone back and read all the issues recently, really, really enjoyed this. They dealt with all the things that were happening in comics at the time, right? Sometimes you need to do a crossover, you need to bring this character in, but really they were able to tell their Batman story. And Damian Wayne is a wonderful addition to the Batman mythos and the way that they handled the introduction. And you had the Kuberts on artwork, and you just had so many strong story arcs within this larger run from Batman. I'm blanking here for a second, but you had the Batman Incorporated part of it. You had Batman and Robin. So it wasn't just one Batman story all the way through. You had the return of Bruce Wayne. There were all these different story arcs going on in this larger run that just looking back at it was awesome.
There were a lot of concepts in it that Grant Morrison was exploring. And I think with any of that Grant stuff, like you said, it's hard to read month to month because it's like, well, where is this going? You don't know where it sits. But if you have a whole stack of Morrison to read, it makes perfect sense. It's one of those things that you're better off waiting till you either have a whole complete chunk of it to read, or you get the trade paperbacks or the graphic novels, because you really need to flip back and forth a lot to get to the point. Yeah. And I think that's one of the joys of it.
Yeah, it's not only is it referencing every Batman story that's ever come before, right? Like the stuff with Zura and R, and like the Black Case book, right? Like that's the words I was looking for earlier. But it's also self-referential, and so like they will tell you things in early issue that you don't even realize are important until 20 issues down the line, where they're like, this panel, this thing happened, this character was introduced, and they did this, and it's like, wow, I knew that, I saw it, but I didn't put it together. And so there's just so much depth to it that I just can't recommend it enough. The graphic novel collections are out there, the hardcovers are out there. Definitely check it out. It's just amazing.
Yep, there's a lot of great rereadability in it, and being a consumer, that's always a bonus. So it's not like it's a one and done.
I'm gonna go reread it right now. Just kidding, I have other stuff to do, but
no.